Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. And welcome back, everybody. She is our professional of the year when it comes to the legal arena. We're going to talk with her today, and interestingly, going to pivot a little bit from her main practice area, which is construction and litigation within that arena. I'm going to talk about a story that a lot of us are focused on right now, and that is the assassination of the CEO of United Healthcare. Lots involved in that, and we're going to go a little bit deeper into that story than you might have heard so far. She's with a wonderful practice in New York City, a partner at Greenspoon, Marder, LLP, and she's Carol Sigmond, and she's back with us. Hi, Carol. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you today?
Very well. Very well. I appreciate you joining us on this rainy day in New York. And this story involving the CEO of United Healthcare has captured pretty much all of us, many of us in disbelief, many a wake up in terms of the insurance situation. Where should we begin with this?
Well, we could start with my arrival at work that morning to find my entire building like surrounded by the police, because it's our plaza, that the back of our plaza at Alliance Bernstein, that he used to flee into Central Park.
Wow, I wasn't aware.
That's how the story started for us.
Oh my gosh, it hit even closer to home for you.
Yeah, so I had all these, friends who knew that my office was next to across 54th Street from the Hilton, checking to make sure I was okay. And yes, I was fine, but it was interesting. So let's really turn to the real issue. So it's been troubling to see how many people have kind of like taken, the murder of this man as okay because they don't like the healthcare system. And murder's never okay. It calls to mind, what happened in the late 70s. Some of us remember going through Martin Luther King, Robert Kennedy, George Wallace, the last of whom was only injured, not killed, later died of his injuries many years later. But it was a brutal and bloody time. It's not a good place to be. It's not a good place for society. And for someone to feel that this is the solution to a problem is really very, very troubling. And we need to look hard at what has led to this situation and caused people to kind of lose their moral compass, because no one should be celebrating an assassination of a human being. That's just wrong.
Yeah. It's and it's been said that this individual who was arrested was playing a video game where there's some similarities, if you will, there. And it's interesting you mentioned those men of the 70s that lost their lives. There were a lot of movies that glorified what we're talking about here. For example, Charles Bronson. I think it was Death Wish, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Correct.
Where he was a vigilante trying to gain justice for a situation, involving his family. And there's been lots of movies and TV shows similar to that. But it does bring to light the insurance situation in our country. I think that's, if we were to take a second and put aside what happened, there's more focus on what's going on within our insurance system in this country.
Yes. So let's talk about it a little bit. And since I'm a lawyer, we're going to talk about it from the perspective of, the legal system and what's been happening, over the last 70 years. So when the Roosevelt administration came in, the second Roosevelt administration, Franklin Roosevelt's administration came into power, they were confronting the Great Depression. And they had a number of things they were trying to do to jumpstart the economy. One of the things they tried to do was regulate their way out. So rather than, wait for Congress, they began to use executive power to sort of regulate their way out, and then he used his dominant legislative majorities in the House and the Senate at the time to create a framework for this regulatory state. And essentially you would have Congress articulate a policy and then, the technocrats would implement the policy. And it's an interesting approach. It's more European than American in many ways, and it has evolved in a way, I think, to remove accountability of government from the people, which is, I think, the essence of the U.S. Constitution, is accountability of government to the public. Since, the Constitution is the contract between we, the people, and our government. And I'll take a fairly simple area. Take worker safety. So Congress announces a policy of worker safety called the Occupational Health and Safety Act, OSHA, Safety and Health Act, OSHA. And the Department of Labor begins to implement it. And the Department of Labor makes rules. These rules are supposed to be rationally based. They're supposed to be discussed with the industry. And they're supposed to be responsive to the public. In fact, what's happened in that and many other rulemaking areas is that it's the technocrats that are making the rules, really without regard to, local circumstances, industry needs, maybe costs, and maybe what's practical in a business. And so you have this growing gap between the public and the people making the rules. So while Congress is still accountable and the president or the governor or the mayor is still accountable, all those technocrats have no accountability. And over the years, in a move that I've found stunning, most administrative rulemaking has removed a duty to comply with the law. So you can go through, for example, the Federal Acquisition Regulation for construction and public purchases by the U.S. government, and nowhere in there does it say federal employees will always comply with federal law. Seems basic. Seems like it ought to be a rule. It's not there. Used to be there. Was there 50 years ago. It isn't there today.
How did that get omitted or not included back in?
I think the government employees wanted to be able to. This isn't corruption. We're not talking about people who want to steal. Mm-hmm. I think we're talking about people who wanted to be able to do what they thought was best, with quotes around it, air quotes.
Right.
And they didn't want to be troubled by, little things like acts of Congress. Let's just do what we want to do because we know what's best.
It sounded like they wanted to swing the door open so that they could make changes a lot more easily. Again, thinking that those are the best changes for all. Correct.
I believe that's right. And I think that that's what you will find fairly consistently.
Wow.
There's a concept of this that somehow these folks are corrupt or bad or evil. I don't think they are. I think they're well-meaning. But I think they have lost touch with what's very critical, which is the executive branch of government must be accountable to the public. And that's governors and mayors and the president. And that means that entire administration that the President of the United States presides over through the cabinet and through the other executive departments, the CDC, the OSHA, Department of Agriculture, Food and Drug Administration. The list goes on and on and on. And all of them are affecting our lives. All of them are making rules. And many of them are not really thinking. They're thinking about what they think is best for people, not necessarily what's practical or reasonable or realistic.
It's amazing when you look deeper into some of these things. Like, for example, you have the Food and Drug Administration. They don't regulate pet food. It's 2024. You have no idea what is in the food that you're feeding your pets in a country like this. Blows my mind. But looking at it with an eye on insurance, and I'm going to loosely say this, do you think it's almost like the Wild West when it comes to... Okay.
There is an element of that, yeah. Yeah. And so let's look at what happened to our healthcare system. I mean, let's be honest about what happened. It was an effort to limit the health care available to the middle class in order to make more health care available to the poor and working poor. And that was the real premise behind healthcare, the healthcare reform.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sold to the middle class on the grounds that it will have no effect on you. And in fact, it was completely targeted at them. So you find yourself in New York, for example, if you happen to be a woman of a certain age, and let's just say, not, over 21,
mm-hmm.
and you get distinctly less quality health care in New York because the notion is that you don't need it. You're not economically important. So the fact that you're in pain or the fact that you have issues does not matter. And so I found myself at one point with an orthopedic injury, and I couldn't get approved for an MRI.
Same exact thing happened to me. Rotator cuff wasn't a major issue.
Oh, that's what mine was, the possible rotator cuff.
How funny is that? What are the chances of that? And I wound up going to physical therapy because they suggested my primary. Well, you might as well just go. I go there, and only to find out that wasn't covered, and I had an $80 copay, and then I get a bill months later from said physical therapy location, which I never went back to because it just wasn't helpful. We'll leave it at that. Now I owe $234. I'm like, well, you guys told me it was $80 at the desk, and that was my copay. And then to your point, the MRI's denied twice. I got a sonogram or some kind of imaging right there. Fortunately, it resolved itself. It's okay. What happened to you?
Well, mine also resolved itself, thank God. It turned out to be a torn muscle, so that wasn't completely torn, so it healed, thank God.
Yep.
But and I didn't even bother to try physical therapy. I just, put up with the pain and did the strengthening exercises the doctor gave me and got through it. But but here's what's tragic. So you and I, who pay for our care and who are part of the system that was paying,
yep.
We're not getting the care, but a Medicaid patient walks in and gets whatever they want.
Everybody tells me that is the best insurance. Those who are getting credit, and we're talking about New York State, but I'm sure it's similar in other areas, they're getting the best insurance possible, the best care possible, and not paying a penny.
But the system is set up to have us pay for that.
Right.
So we're not. So we're rated. Most of us are rated with those folks, and our dollars go into a common pool, and they get to spend the lion's share of it. And that's why I say this didn't work out the way it should have worked out.
How in the heck did that go wrong? Because it seems quite simple, to figure out a system like that. How was that even allowed to go wrong?
Well, New York was a little different than some other states. And what New York did was exempted certain groups from, let's call it, community rating. They exempted parts of the labor unions. We'll talk about them in a minute. They exempted government workers, and they exempted some certain large employers. But they put small business and people from the unions who were on workers' comp. So they were people who were already sick. And they put the poor into a common pool. And then they said, we're capping how much money we're paying for the poor. The middle class can pay the rest.
Wow. And
it became a de facto tax increase. Other states did it differently. New York's implementation, I think, is particularly egregious and has caused more problems in New York of the type we're talking about. Other states have different issues. But the fundamental basic premise of Obamacare was we're going to limit care to the middle class, and we are going to use those dollars for the poor, and we're going to do so putting an emphasis on preventative care to try to improve the health of everyone. So that's a lofty goal, okay? We should not detract from the loftiness of the goal. We should not have told people that they were not going to lose their health insurance. That was a lie, and President Obama should never have said that. That was a terrible lie. And if you really want to know why I think we are where we are, in part, it's because that lie was told so often to so many people and believed by so many, and has proven to be so wrong that people got angry. And I think that was a terrible thing that was done. There was also a massive mistake made in Obamacare, which is a different issue. And that is they allowed the development of third-party administrators, not unlike what's going on with United Healthcare, where they can act as gatekeepers for healthcare. So you have Medicare and Medicaid with no gatekeeper, and you have this massive gatekeeper on the middle class. And that is creating part of this dichotomy we were talking about between those of us who are on private insurance and folks who are on Medicare. It's the gatekeeper function. And that's because these companies are allowed to earn a profit. That probably was a terrible idea, to allow profit-making companies to be third-party administrators. And there probably should be a cap on their profits and their rights and their privileges, and there needs to be more regulation of them, either financial or just flat-out regulatory. Because while New York has some problems, I will tell you another New York story that will cause you to laugh. Many years ago, I was supposed to have sinus surgery, which I did have and was very successful. But the day before I was supposed to go into the hospital, some nurse from the insurance company decides that it's cosmetic. Oh. Now, what she didn't know was that my doctor had already submitted all of my information to the physician at that same insurance company, who had already ruled it medically necessary. So you have a nurse who is overruling a doctor on what is medically necessary. Think about that. So I sent a complaint to the state immediately, copy to the insurance company, but a complaint to the state. Within about 4 hours, they reversed their decision and said they would pay for the surgery because there was their own guy saying I needed the surgery. It was medically necessary. I get this letter a few months later from the state of New York thanking me for my complaint, acknowledging my complaint, thanking me for it, and informing me that the insurance company involved had been fined, and it was a big number.
Wow.
It's a lot more than my insurance. And then they go on to say, and thank you very much, because of your complaint, we have opened an investigation, and we are looking at, all of these issues. It turned out they were looking at issues for women who needed sinus surgery who were all being rejected by this particular carrier on the grounds that it was cosmetic, even when the doctors were saying it was medically necessary.
Thank you very much.
And there were more fines.
Fines. For sharing that, because many of us think, who's going to listen? First of all, the medical practice listened in 4 hours because they probably realized, we have a problem. She's making some noise. And I thought that story was going to end there. Shocking that the state actually took your complaint and actually did something with it. Wow. Yes.
So if you're in New York and something like that is happening to you, I urge you to reach out to the director of I think it's Office of Financial Services. They're also the superintendent of insurance. File your complaint. And, New York likes nothing better than to fine these people.
Well, yeah. And, most importantly, make sure you CC those involved in the situation because they're... Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
Because it's a form of accountability. But that's to my point. You need more accountability.
Yeah.
And New York has a very complicated rule-based system. And I jokingly tell clients who come from out of state, welcome to New Netherlands. This is not English common law, and this is not the French civil system. This is the Netherlands, transplanted in the United States, and so it's a mix of common law and regulation that is unique to New York. I think it's unique to New York. And it explains some of our silliness. But
it's just mind-boggling, and you talk about the middle class, within insurance, and it really crystallizes everything. in the state of New York, and I got to get, there's probably some other states out there with the quote unquote marketplace where you have to buy your insurance through this, even though you're completely paying for it yourself. You don't get a penny from the state, but I have to believe, please confirm that you're doing that because the state is making money off the insurance companies.
No, I don't think the state is making money off the insurance companies. What the states are doing is they are driving down the out-of-pocket for the state taxpayer for the care of the poor and shifting it to the rest of the insurance pool.
But when you make your payments, you're making it directly to the insurance company. It's not being funneled through New York State, then to the insurance company. So how is that taking place?
But it's taking place because some of those Medicaid patients get assigned to different insurance carriers for administrative purposes, and then the dollars follow.
Gotcha. Wow.
It's
corrupt. It's corrupt. I'm going to say that's my opinion. It's horrible.
Every state is. I don't think it was set up to be corrupt. What it was set up to be was the governor had a goal. He wanted to reach his goal, and he didn't care, what happened when. And this is Governor Cuomo, obviously. He didn't care what happened when he reached his goal. He just had a goal in mind. And the complexities and the unfairnesses he wasn't looking at. He was looking at, what he wanted to see as governor. And that's what I mean when I say this loss of accountability. I don't think Andrew Cuomo meant any harm. I don't think he sought to have the results that you and I are experiencing.
Right.
And I doubt he intended any of the kind of alienation that has developed. But he was so focused on what he wanted, and no one was really thinking about what the implications were. And the entire system created this huge opportunity to make massive money through these third-party administrators. Why are drug prices so high? Drug prices are not high because of the drug companies. They're high because of the third-party administrators.
Got about 30 or 40 seconds. I don't even know if this is possible, but in the state of New York, we're focused here now. What's the best way to fix what's going on here?
Believe it or not, I think the Biden administration was on the right track. I hope it continues. They were pursuing antitrust against the third-party administrators for some of these drug prices, and they were investigating them. And I think antitrust and price-fixing investigations as to the third-party administrators all over the country, and to the extent that the insurance companies are working with them, the insurance companies as well, to squeeze the price-fixing out, because it's not the drug companies, it's third-party administrators, and to make them more accountable for the decisions they're making, and to create a meaningful appeal process for any of their adverse decisions, so that whatever decision they make for Medicare, they have to make for Medicaid, they have to make for regular people. If you do that and you drive some of this money out of this, I think, at least the health care piece of it would be fixed. But what's at the base of all this is accountability.
I was just going to say that word. and we'll end there. Carol, wonderful talking with you today. The firm you're with, gmlaw.com. You're a partner in this firm dealing in construction and litigation practice groups at the practice, but today just demonstrated how deep you go in terms of legal and how you look at everything that's going on now. And I truly appreciate it. I try. Oh, you do.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Be well.
Need expert legal support? Carol A. Sigmond at Greenspoon Marder specializes in business litigation, transactional law, and real estate banking and finance. With years of experience, Carol provides tailored solutions to protect your business. Call 212-524-5074 or visit gmlaw.com for trusted counsel. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing? Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit. And make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.